Alright, let's close out this chapter on the politics of climate change with maybe some good news, right? Who doesn't need good news in these days? These days, so many things seem kind of depressing, but hopefully you're just playing and enjoying and learning at school and doing the good things that you're supposed to be doing and dreaming about flying to Mars and Moon and so on, and building rockets as well as green technologies and so on. Let's look at how the international spread of environmental policies has happened. So here is the source of this information. I won't read into the details. There is a lot of information about adaptation level and the number of countries where the policy was adopted, and is going from 1 to as high as 43, and this is the 2005 adoption level. So this is a bit old here, but it doesn't matter. This thing has even gotten better. Across 43 OECD and Central and Eastern European countries, Organization of Economically Cooperating and Developing, and Economic Cooperation and Development is what OECD is, has many countries in it. But just to give you an example, environmental policies now are growing into sustainable development strategies, environmental strategies, sustainability commissions, packaging waste policies, environmental plans, green certificates for renewable electricity, feed-in tariffs for renewable energy standards, air pollution control laws, and access to environmental information to the people, and environmental advisory councils, and water pollution controls, and nature protection laws, and soil conservation laws, and energy taxes, and waste laws, and eco labels on products, and so on and so forth. So is that good news? Well, let's say it is, because as we said before, setting up the rules in the book is one thing, but implementing them and enforcing them is another thing. What are people thinking about? So here this is from a Pew Research Center, which produces fantastic reports. You should look them up if you're old enough. This is from 2021, so it's fairly recent. Many across the world are concerned about climate change, and that it will personally harm them during their lifetime. I'm old and I'm still worried about it. You're still very young, so you need to decide what you think about this, given all this information that you are soaking in. So the percentage who are concerned that global climate change will harm them personally at some point in their lifetime from different countries here. Okay, so overall, and then up to here. So these are the numbers. Let's not worry about that. So the scales here are people who are not at all worried, people are not too worried, people who are somewhat worried, and people are very worried. So you can see the distribution in Canada and in the US. They are rich countries, but they are not so worried about climate change compared to Greece, where 57% are very worried, and Spain has 46, and there are other countries like Sweden which doesn't seem to be worried. What causes this? Well, there are cultural issues, there are information issues, there is also ignoring the information issue, because people may know that climate change may be happening, but they may be thinking it's happening somewhere, it's happening in India and China, and we don't have to worry about it, and even if we do something, they will keep continuing to make climate change worse anyway, and so on and so forth. But it is good news that there are many countries where people are very worried, but the trick is, just because you are worried doesn't mean you will do something about it. And for that we go back to candies. If you're a little kid, if you're older, you need to find something else, like being on WhatsApp or on the computer, on the phone, during the class, being on the internet and so on, to see if you know that it's bad, and yet Are you able to do something about it? Are you able to give it up and reduce these bad habits and so on? So just because people in a country are worried doesn't mean necessarily that they are doing something about it, but they may be asking the politicians they vote for to do something about it. Okay, so these are the kind of complicated issues about climate change. Let me introduce you to another idea. It's called a wicked problem. What is a wicked problem? In the 1960s, there were two urban design professors at the University of California in Berkeley, which is in the northern part of California. We kept talking about La Jolla, which is another place where it is the Scripps Institution of Oceanography that we mentioned, but that's part of the University of California, San Diego. So these chain of University of Californias, California, the western coast state, which is long from the north to the south. So somewhere in the north you have, not very far north, in the middle, let's say you have the University of California, Berkeley. And where was I going with that? I don't remember, but what was I talking? Yeah, so we are talking about what people do and don't do about climate change, and how you have to decide for yourself what people do and don't do and how it relates to politics, right? So you have to decide for yourself whether you are worried about climate change and whether you want to tell your parents about it, and whether they want to do something about it, and what they tell you about it, what the teacher is saying, what your brothers and sisters are telling you, friends are telling you. You may have different opinions from different people, right? So how do you weigh all these opinions? The wicked problem is related to this. We were talking about the urban design professors from the University of California, Berkeley. In the 1960s, they had to deal with sharing a space that belonged to the community, let's say the town of Berkeley, and they were deciding what to do, and people just could not agree on what to do. After many discussions, these professors decided that this problem does not have a solution. It just has to find some agreement temporarily, with majority agreeing to do something, and it's called resolution. The problem was resolved, which means after some time people may say, I don't like this resolution anymore, let's change it. So you have to discuss again and resolve it again. So these problems which don't have a solution are called wicked problems. And you can think of many problems, including your candy habit or your WhatsApp habit, in your cell phone use habit, and so on and so forth. Just because you know it's a bad thing doesn't mean you immediately agree to a solution that you yourself understood, or your mom is telling you, or teacher is telling you, and so on and so forth. So if you are grown up, you know that there are issues of guns, who should own guns, whether everybody should own guns or not, and education, what should kids be taught in school, whether parents should decide it, whether government should decide it, how the history is interpreted in the education, whether evolution should be taught, or whether we should say evolution is not real science, and so on and so forth. So there are many problems that are called wicked problems. So you can remember them as problems that do not have solution, which means we just have to find an agreement and resolve them and find a resolution, which means we may have to resolve them again and again over time. And climate change is one of those problems, which is a wicked problem, because not everybody agrees that there is climate change, not everybody agrees that we are the cause, not everybody agrees on what to do about it, and not everybody thinks they will get harmed. They will say something will happen there, and they will say I will protect myself, I don't care, and so on and so forth. So climate change continues to be a wicked problem, especially because so many people are involved. You are sitting, let's say, in India and doing something, breathing bad air because pollution is being produced by maybe locally or maybe coming from somewhere else, or maybe climate Delhi heat waves are related to what's happening over the Middle East warming and how that is changing the winds, and the Middle East warming is related to the greenhouse gases which were mostly produced by the rich countries like Europe and America and so on and so forth. So who is responsible? Who should do something about it? If you tell the United States reduce your emissions because we are having heat waves, are they likely to listen to you? Not really. But this is why we have the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, which develops these agreements by discussing with all the parties that are participating, the signatories of the Paris Agreement, say we will voluntarily reduce our emissions and so on. So wicked problems get resolved in this way, but we cannot force the countries to do them. You can just monitor and say, hey, you are falling behind, or what you are not doing is not enough, or it's not fast enough, and so on. So you have to keep on coming back to the United Nations to discuss and agree again and do the resolution again. And in the meantime you see the Keeling curve going up and up and up, which means we are not moving fast enough. But who is not moving fast enough? Not everybody is emitting the same amount of carbon or other greenhouse gases. So this is a wicked problem. So now you have to think about what you can do and what role you think you will play, and will you just produce some nice solutions to take out the carbon from the air, or produce some energy that is very efficient and renewable and has zero emissions, and whether you will produce things in a very low carbon manner, and so on and so forth. So exciting things to do. It's a challenge. It's a challenge, and it's a challenge, and a serious challenge, but it's an opportunity for you to learn and do something and find green technology, make money, but save humanity. Making money doesn't have to always harm the environment. Maybe you will find a way to make money by saving lives. So think about positive things, be positive, do positive things, be good, do well, be good. Okay, see you in the next chapter, which will be on, what is the next chapter? That is chapter 9. So we were talking about climate politics in this chapter. Now we will talk about some impacts of climate change, such as extreme weather. We'll talk about food and famine, and we'll talk about the heat waves and so on. Okay, see you in the next podcast.